I'm excited about today's video because it's about something that I love doing, and that's repotting. If you've seen my previous videos, you'll know that I don't always get to repot my plants as frequently as I should do or want to do because I've got so many plants. But in this video, I'm going to share some tips that I've learned along the way from the pots that I use, the soil that I use for my succulents, cacti, my tropical house plants. I also have a couple of plants to repot. I've got this Tradescanthia that my boys got me for my birthday. It is outgrowing its pot because it's got some roots coming out. And I also have a Dracaena that's in desperate need of a repot. So let's get going. The recommended frequency to repot most plants is every 12 months. However, I don't get to repot my plants every 12 months because, like I said, I've got so many plants, and if I was to do that, I'd be spending the whole year repotting. So I will be sharing some signs that I look out for later on in this video, but I wait for my plants to tell me when they need a repot by looking out for some signs. But the reason we need to repot plants every 12 months or so is because plants go through a huge growth spike during the growing season. So in the UK, that would be from the beginning of April or end of March to beginning of April to the end of October. That's when plants do most of their growing. So they can very quickly outgrow their pots. Also, when a pot is in our environment, their nutrients very quickly can run out. Whereas if they're in the wild and they've got decomposed leaves around them, they've got bugs crawling, it's a natural form of fertilization. But when they are in our environment and they've got some tap water that might be hard, they've got radiators around them, their nutrients run out really quickly, and this little pot just can't hold nutrients for very long. So that's why it's really good to repot plants, to give them a fresh soil with a natural fertilizer if you can, to top them up on those nutrients. But also when I repot a plant, I notice the growth spike significantly because the plant has more room to grow, but also the soil is nutrient rich, which just feeds the plant and keeps it happy and healthy. So there are some definite benefits to repotting frequently every 12 months or so, although I do know of people that repot every 6 months, and I always say in my plant videos, whatever works for you and whatever works for your plants. If you don't have time to repot every 12 months and if your plants are happy, then you repot when you've got the time and when your plants need it. If you want to repot every 6 months, then go for it. If your plants are happy, if you've got the time, then you do what works for you. Plant care should be what works for us, and also by keeping our plants healthy. So I'm always interested to hear what other people do with their repotting. So let me know how frequently you repot, and is it something that you love or is it a chore? Let me know in the comments below. There are some easy signs to look out for if you're ever wondering whether you need to repot your plant or not. I'll show you this Dracaena. It's got some roots poking out. That means that the pot is getting too small for the plant. It has grown and it's got a lot of growth coming out since I have had it. So this tells me that the plant needs a bigger pot, which I'm going to give it today. So other signs could be that the soil is consistently dry. You might water and water, but the soil just dries out too quickly. It's just because there might be no humidity in the soil. It doesn't hold any moisture. Another sign could be that the soil is pulling away from the inside of the pot. It's kind of gravitating towards the middle and pulling away from the pot. Another big sign is if a plant is toppling over. I've got a huge monstera in that corner, and sometimes I'm a bit too scared to move it. You know, when you put a plant in a space and it's kind of smallish and controllable, and then you forget about it, and then a few months down the line it's just so big you don't want to move it. That's where I'm at with that monstera, and I'm going to try and bring it in here, although I take everything else around me out with the leaves. but I want to show you what it looks like when it's toppling over, because that's such a sign that the plant is just too big for the pot. So just bear with me, let me move things out the way if I can and bring the plant in, and I'll show you what a toppled over plant looks like. 1 second. This is not a good idea, but I'm gonna bring this in just to show you the things we do. So I am kind of pinning the leaves in together because it's spread out so much, but this, you can't, hello, this Monstera is in this, oh gosh, I'm hitting the ceiling, is in this tiny pot, and it cannot stand without me holding it because it's just, well, it can. But if I push it ever so slightly, it just topples over because it's just outgrown the pot completely. The moss or the coir pole is a good size, it's a good height, but the roots are just too big for the pot, and it is a job I need to get to. Perhaps not for today because I need a bit more room to repot this plant. But what I'm trying to say is, if your plants are toppling over in the pot, it's a definite sign that you need to repot it. I'm going to put this lovely plant back into its decorative pot, which is kind of holding it up for me, thankfully. And then I'll be back to talk to you about the best pots to use. 1 second. I'm back. Gosh, that's hard work, but I'm glad I could show you. So let's talk about pots. I love using a big variety of pots when it comes to my plants and when it comes to repotting. I have some of these fibre pots, which are great for smaller plants, although you do get some bigger ones as well. I've got my Hoya, one of my Hoyas, in this lovely fibre pot. They are completely biodegradable. If you haven't seen them yet, when I plant my plants in here, when this plant outgrows the pot by maybe roots are coming out the bottom and I just see the plant is getting bigger, I simply take the whole pot with the plant in and I pop it into a bigger pot, fill it with soil, and this completely breaks down in active soil. It's completely plastic free, there's no waste, there's no stress to the plant because you don't have to take the plant out of the pot. They are really clever, I love using them. And you do get some different sizes. I've got some bigger ones in those fibre pots as well. But they're great if you just want to have an easy pot for, you know, repotting on, because you don't have to take the plant out. So it's less mess as well. Another obvious one would be plastic pots. Let me just grab this plastic pot here. Obvious ones are plastic pots. I've got so many of them and I reuse all of my plastic pots. It's a bit of a pain because it means you have to find storage for them, but I never like chucking them away because I just know there's going to be a plant that I'm going to need to repot at some point. But also I don't like sending them to landfill. My local garden centres, and I don't know if some of your garden centres do that as well, but they've got a like a storage bin where people come and recycle their plastic pots, and then clients can just come and use or reuse and help themselves to some free plastic pots. So if you're ever looking for some plastic pots, go to your local garden centre and ask if they've got a free resource of pots that you can help yourself to. It saves money, it saves the environment, and you always have plastic pots available. Another one that I use is terracotta. So definitely good, gosh that's heavy, definitely good for succulents and cacti because terracotta pots are porous, which means it drains the moisture out, which keeps the plants and the soil dry. I don't tend to pot plants like a begonia, like this one for example. I don't like to pot plants like a begonia or a peace lily Or what other plants can I think about? Even Tradescantia. I don't like potting them directly into terracotta because I don't want the soil for those plants drying out too quickly, because I try and keep that soil evenly moist. Whereas I know with succulents and cacti, they like a dry soil, and terracotta works really well. Especially if you think you're an overwaterer, plant directly into terracotta with your succulents and cacti, because the terracotta will help you draw that moisture out quicker so that you don't overwater your plants. Terracotta is a great solution, and I love the look of them as well. I don't tend to use self-watering pots. I know there are some great self-watering pots out there. I like to stick to the traditional. These 3 pots that I have tried self-watering before, but I kind of like being in control of the watering and knowing how much I've watered and what's going on in that soil. So do you use self-watering pots? Let me know in the comments. I have had some before, but I just really prefer doing everything myself and knowing what goes on in that soil. But whatever works for you, let me know what's your favourite pot or pots to use. When it comes to choosing the pot size for your next pot up, I tend to go about 3 to 4 centimetres bigger than the current pot that the plant is in. So this Tradescantia, for example, I thought this pot would be a really good next pot up. If a plant is a lot bigger and it needs a bigger pot, then of course I'd go bigger than 3 to 4 centimetres up, but I find normally about 4 centimetres is a good diameter to go up. Another thing to consider when you're choosing a pot is whether you're going for a pot with drainage holes or whether you're potting directly into a pot without drainage. Both can work for you. If you choose a pot with no drainage holes, it would be a good idea to add a layer of pebbles as a drainage layer, because when you water your plant, there's nowhere for that water to escape and run through. But that drainage layer of pebbles will just raise the soil a little bit and make sure that the soil doesn't get soggy, which rots the roots of your plant. You also have to trust your watering to know that you're not overwatering, but if you feel confident about that, then go for it and plant directly into a pot with no drainage. Or the alternative is to choose a pot with drainage holes. It depends what your preference is. Both can work really well, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's so important to use the right soil for your houseplants, and I love mixing my own soils together. The bags that you find in garden centres or in shops, I find a little bit too dense for my houseplants, and I just find when I repot my plants in that soil, the water when I water my plant just doesn't drain out freely, and I'm always worried that the water is just going to sit in the middle of the pot and rot the roots of my plant. So instead of using that soil alone, I mix my own soil and different elements together to create a moisture-rich and a free draining soil. So for my leafy tropical houseplants like Pile, Begonia, Tradescantia, everything that's not succulents and cacti, I use a soil, and in that soil I add some bark for some extra drainage and some humidity. I also add some perlite for some extra drainage. I add some worm castings, which is a natural fertilizer. It's a slow release fertilizer. And I add some coco coir. The coco coir is the outer shell of a coconut. It's so light and airy, and I just find that it just creates air pockets in the soil so that the roots of my plants can breathe. If you can't find all of those elements, if you can't find worm castings, or if you can't find coco coir, then the bark and the perlite mixed with your soil will be a really good addition, because it will just add a bit of humidity and a bit of drainage, which will be perfect for your houseplants. If you can't add the natural worm castings as a fertilizer, you can just use a liquid fertilizer, which I do, as well as the worm castings. So don't worry, you don't have to add all of those elements. The bark and the perlite mixed with your soil would be a great addition to keep your plants healthy. I'm in the process of creating, well, I have started my own wormery. So that is to create a liquid fertilizer, but also to create the worm castings that I use in my soil. I always used to buy these things in, and then I thought it's so easy to create a wormery. I'm using some tiger worms, and the worms are being fed from the scrap elements that are in my kitchen. So potato peel, carrot peel, they eat the vegetables that I chop up that we don't need anymore. I don't put any cooked meat or fish or cooked products in there, but they are loving it and they are producing some really good worm castings for me. If anyone's ever interested to find out more about wormeries and how to create your own to create a great fertilizer for your plants, let me know in the comments. It's not as slimy and it's not as difficult to look at or to manage as you might think. It's just so rewarding knowing that you can create a worm casting and a liquid fertilizer for your plants all for free using the scraps from your kitchen. When it comes to my succulents and cacti, I have a slightly different mix, and I use a soil base as well, but I add some grit, some sand for some extra drainage. Horticultural grit is really good to use. I have a sand here which I will show a bit of a close-up for you. This is a little bit fine. I do use it sometimes because I do find it adds a bit of grit, but if you can go a little bit grittier, like a horticultural soap, that works really well. And then I add some worm castings as well. So the succulents and cacti mix that I use is a very basic mix. It's got the soil, some grit, and some worm castings for a natural fertilizer. But again, if you don't have the worm castings, just make sure that you add the extra grit. You can fertilize your plants using a liquid fertilizer, so your plants will still get the nutrients if you can't find worm castings. I've got some basic tools that I use when it comes to repotting, and one of the things I find work really well is an airtight lid for those elements that I talked about earlier. So I've got 5 different tubs, one for my bark, one for perlite, one for my worm castings, one for cocoquia, because I like keeping it in an airtight lid so bugs and any creepy crawlies can't enter. When I'm ready to repot a plant, I scoop all of those elements out into a big tub like this, and I use the soil in here to repot my plants. So if you want to store your bark and perlite and soil safely, get yourself some airtight lids. They are not that expensive and they're really good stackable boxes as well to save some space. But I find that my soil, my perlite, my cocoquia stays fresh in these airtight lids. Some other things I use is a repot mat. You need a good repot mat just to catch the old soil and to catch some mess. I'm still making mess with the repot mat, but it catches most of the soil. I'm going to be using this in a minute, so I'll show you what this looks like when I set this up to repot. Secateurs, a really good set of secateurs is really helpful as well, because when I come to repot some of my pots and some of the roots need a trim or some of the old leaves need to be cut off, secateurs are really helpful. I also have a little fork, I guess you can call that, because I'll show you how I'm going to use it when I repot. It's just really good to when you take the plant out of the pot, if you need to just divide the roots a little bit or scrape some of that soil away, this little fork is a really handy tool. Of course, you can use your hands as well, but if you don't want to use your hands, a fork is great. And then, of course, a trowel. You get some beautiful trowels. Don't need to spend a lot of money on a trowel, but I love my trowel. Or you can use your hands. You don't need a trowel. I'm going to get all of my stuff ready, get my repot mat out, get my soil to hand, and I'm going to repot a Tradescanthia. And if I've got enough soil mixed together, I will do the Dracaena as well. So let me get set up and I'll show you how I'm going to repot these lovely plants. I hope you can see me all right. I have just moved my camera, but I'm not sure what the view is like. So I'm hoping it's a good view, but that, I'm just gonna set up my repot mat. The space I'm currently in is, I'm really lucky to have this space. It's my plant room in my house, but I will soon be moving. I can't say too much just yet, but I will soon be moving to a bigger space, and I cannot wait to show you what that's going to be like. And yeah, keep an eye on my page, on my channel, but I will be moving very soon and leave this beautiful plant room that I'm very grateful to have. Anyway, let's get on to the repotting. I've got my tub over here. I don't want to pop that in the way so that you can't see. So let me pop my tub over here, Dracaena over here. Let's go for, gosh, that string of hearts is tangling on everything. Let me just get this untangled very quickly. Let's start with the Tradescanthia. And my boys got me this plant for my birthday, and it was from a lady who lives in my village. She's got a little plant stand. She propagates her plants and she sells it for some donations to the church. So I drove past and I said, oh, that's a lovely plant. And then my boys cycled up, got this for me for a small donation for the church, and they surprised me for my birthday, which is lovely. But it's now outgrown the pot. It's got some roots coming out, and it's just telling me that it's really time for a repot. So I'm just going to remove most of that soil and make it loose. Hopefully these roots will just kind of go through those drainage holes. If some of those roots break off like that, it's not a problem. And just see if that comes out. There we go, that's come out nicely. I do want to, where's my little fork? It's here. I do want to remove some of that soil because it's not as healthy a soil that I'm going to put into the pot now. So I'm just going to use my little fork to remove some of that soil. If a plant is too root bound, I'm just going to use my hands. I love using my hands. If a plant is too root bound, then it's often difficult to force the roots and, you know, not to damage the plant. But just see how you go and see how root bound that plant is. This is looking quite good. So there's 2 plants in there, but I'm going to keep them together. I'm not going to force it too much because as the plant grows in the pot, the roots will start to just find their new way and kind of loosen up nicely. I don't even know where my trowel's gone. I'm just going to use my hands. So just going to scoop some of that fresh soil in there that I've mixed together this morning. Maybe a bit too much. I need to pop my plant in first. I love repotting because if you've seen my previous videos, you might be fed up of me saying this, but I grew up in South Africa and I had such an outdoor lifestyle, outdoor upbringing, and I always had my hands in soil. I was making mud cakes as I was playing outside, and I walked around barefoot, which I think the thought of that to some people would just be horrendous because the thought of walking around barefoot, but there's such a benefit, and I am very appreciative of my outdoor upbringing, my nature-based upbringing, and I have continued that into the job that I do now with houseplants. So I love repotting, and I really should repot more frequently. I just need to make a bit more time because it's such a mindful activity to do as well. It's just time to switch off and just to connect to nature. So that looks amazing already, and it hasn't even grown. I will let that plant just sit in soil. I'm going to give it a drink in a minute, but I will let that sit and then maybe fertilize it in a few days or so. Just let it settle into its soil first. So I do think I've got enough soil for my Dracaena. So let's see what this Dracaena is doing. I have a bigger pot. Oh yeah, it's in the Dracaena. The Dracaena's in the pot. So as you can see, this Dracaena has completely outgrown the pot as well. The soil is just pulling away from the sides. It's a really old looking soil and it's just time to repot. So similarly, I'm just gonna loosen that. It's very old soil this, so it's just coming away quite easily and quickly. Whoops, that's a big mess. But it helps me because the soil has just come loose. One good thing to look at as you're repotting is just to make sure that the roots are looking nice and plump and healthy. If the roots are looking soft and like it's rotten, you can even sometimes smell a rotten root. It's a good idea to cut the roots away and just make sure that you don't repot the plant with rotten roots in the fresh soil. But these roots are nice and firm. They are a healthy colour. They're not black or soft or pulling away or anything like that. And this soil is just coming away really nicely. So there we go. There we go. Love that. Really healthy roots. Just get some of that soil away. And it's ready for some fresh soil now. So I'm going to, I think I've got enough soil. I do. So even though I have a natural fertilizer in here with my worm castings, I will still fertilize these plants in a few days' time. I'll just let it settle into its pot first. And now the problem is, now that I've chosen some bigger plastic pots, I need some bigger decorative pots, which is never a bad thing because I do love a new decorative pot. So I'm just securing those roots and just topping up with some extra soil. You see, you don't even need a trowel. You can just use your fingers if you want to. Just make sure that if you have a cut or if you've got damaged skin, if you want to protect your fingers, then please make sure that you do. So I've nearly run out of soil, which is not great. I'm going to have to go and mix some fresh soil together and just top this plant up to secure it even more into the pot. But for now, that is all done. I just need to top up the soil because the plant is a little bit wobbly in here, but it's just because there's not enough soil in there because I've run out of soil here. So I am going to give all this a tidy up and then we're going to finish off. But there's two lovely plants. I just think they look so much bigger already and they haven't even done any growing. So let me tidy this up and then we'll finish up. Just put my camera back, so I hope you can see me all right. So those are all of my tips when it comes to repotting, and I hope you enjoyed watching. Please let me know in the comments, how frequently do you repot? Do you use any other tools when you repot your plants? Does it feel like a chore? Is it something you enjoy doing? Let me know all of those things in the comments. But thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about plants, about repotting that I didn't cover, also please let me know in the comments below. But I will see you next time. Bye.